This is your before and after story. Instead of imagining a rewarding career in medical imaging, Southeastern College can actually take you there. Prepare for a career in ultrasound, radiology, and X-ray technology with hands-on specialized training, simulations, and real-life experience with the latest imaging technology. You'll be ready to play a vital role on any healthcare team. Transform your life by helping others. Southeastern College. Your future is bright. Visit scc.edu to get started.
Now, the Hunt Palmer Show.
A magic beyond anything you could ever imagine.
You are now listening to the Hunt Palmer Show. Brought to you by Sagrera Farms on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Locking down the middle of the day.
You really think that's the best idea?
Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio, this is Hunt Palmer.
It's quite a piece of work.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer, not coming to you from Mercedes-Benz, the Baton Rouge studio downtown in the capital city. Instead, one more day right here on Radio Row at SEC Football Media Days 2025, and glad to be here. We're operating at about 20% capacity down there in the writers' room. A lot of the radio stations have packed it up and headed out, especially those that don't have a team featured today. But we're still here, so we're going to rope up a couple of the guys that are still here. We'll talk to Chuck Oliver in the next segment. He's still hanging out here. It's a home game for Chuck, so we'll talk to him a little bit later. J.D. Piquel, of course, you know, host of the Hard Count on 3, will be with us in hour number 2. And we got a lot to do over the course of the next 2 hours before we pack it up and fly on back to the boot. Let's get things started the way we do every single day with our Genesis opening drive.
It's time for Hunt's Opening Drive, presented by Genesis of Baton Rouge.
So we're wrapping up, as I said here. Like, there is very little juice left in this building. A lot of folks are on their last leg here. If you cover Arkansas or you cover Texas A&M, you're still locked in because your team's here. But everybody else is kind of running on fumes a little bit. And I took the opportunity this morning to just kind of think about what narrative I've seen shaped over the last 4 days. And it's nothing earth-shattering, but it is very clear and apparent to me, and it's not like, oh, somebody mentioned that. This is a thought that is generally almost universally held. And it is that LSU is probably right now in most people's top 4 in the SEC, and that puts you right on the fringe of a playoff berth. I think that most people that I talk to consider that Tennessee is probably going to take a step back, think that Ole Miss is probably going to take a step back, and think that the team that is most likely to emerge from the middle of that pack is potentially LSU. And it feels like an eternity ago that LSU grabbed the microphones here in Atlanta. It was Monday morning, first thing, 9 o'clock. And because everybody's gas tank was completely full at that point, it just felt like there was more energy and more juice. And I feel like LSU had the most to say of every team that was here. Now, that doesn't mean anything at all when you get to play in football games. None. Zero. But it did make it crystallize that, like, LSU, when we get to Thanksgiving, is either going to be a team that has gotten back to the level of competing for championships or is going to be a punchline. Like, I don't think there is any other way to frame the conversation. And I don't think there's really anybody else in the SEC that I feel that way about. I mean, I don't think it's just because I cover LSU and I want LSU to win. LSU's the only team that I saw walk around this College Football Hall of Fame all week start talking about national championships. I didn't hear anyone else do that. Brian Kelly did it. I didn't hear anybody walking around talking about winning the Heisman. I heard Whitweek say that about Nussmeier. And I didn't hear anybody speak with as much authority about a game on the schedule as LSU did about Clemson. And there are probably some of you listening to that would go, well, they sound like idiots. Why are they talking a big game? Just go out there and win. And there are probably some of you that go, good, I'm glad they're fired up and they feel like they've got to do something different. The fact of the matter is none of that really matters. But it doesn't make it any less true. Like, this LSU team has got an expectation attached to it that has created a situation where you are either, okay, LSU's back. Brian Kelly got it figured out. They figured out the NIL thing. They figured out the transfer portal thing. They got their quarterback in place. Joe Sloan did figure out how to call plays. Blake Baker did fix the defense. Now LSU is back to being a team that everybody considers a threat in the Southeastern Conference. Or Brian Kelly's not going to get this done at LSU's bad fit. Like, can you, the listener, can you think of a single outcome where LSU is not in one of those two camps? Like, 9-3 right out of the 12-team playoff, that's a failure. And it'll be looked as such. And then think about all the pieces that'll be missing from this team. Like Braylon Moore, Josh Thompson, gone on the offensive line. Garrett Nussmeier, gone at quarterback. Out at wide receiver, Chris Hilton, gone. Aaron Anderson, gone. Barry Brown, gone. Nick Anderson, probably gone. Look at the defense. Jack Pyburn, gone. Whit Weeks, gone. Harold Perkins, gone. Jacobian Guillory, gone. Jamari Butler, gone. Out on the outside, maybe Ashton Stamps leaves at safety. I mean, you get the point. Like, this is a team that most of your starters on offense or defense are going to be moving on. And that means it's time to go. And I don't think it's because I'm sitting here on Thursday when everybody's out of gas and half the people are gone, more than half the people are gone, and there's no energy in here, and LSU went when there was a ton of energy in here. I've watched everybody come through. I've watched probably 11 of the coaches talk. I've heard the quotes and sound bites on Twitter and from the other media members. We've sat in the sports bar at 10 o'clock at night and talked about who talked to who and what happened there. And, nobody brought as much juice to this thing as LSU did. And that's why you come up and you go, well, you're either talking the talk and walking the walk, or you're a joke. It feels like that's the corner that LSU has painted itself into. And, yes, my awareness level of what LSU's doing is higher than most of the people here. But again, I think even with that caveat, that's how I feel about the biggest narrative that has emerged from SEC Media Days. You don't have the monster personality coaches anymore that are going to steal headlines. Les was a goofball up there, and you heard what he would say. And Saban would always come with his agenda, and he would drive home a point, whether somebody asked about it or not. He was going to talk about it. And you've had big personalities like Brett Bielema was, and certainly Steve Spurrier fits into that category. And you had, and Lane came here and. He's big talker on Twitter, but he was kind of monotone and mumbling around here. And you're not going to get a ton from Sam Pittman. Mark Stoops went today, and that's just not going to be a stand-up comedy routine. And you just look around. Hugh Freeze, no, not. Billy Napier is dial tone. He's probably a great guy, seems like it, but there is a lot of vanilla that is in this coaching fraternity in the SEC, and LSU came out swinging on Monday, and nobody's really done that since. So I do think that our team, the one we cover, the one we talk about, was probably the most interesting team here outside of Arch Manning. Everybody wanted to talk about Arch. It was Arch Mania. There was a horde around him. We talked about it a lot. I guess that was 2 days ago. They're all run together at this point. But Arch and LSU was kind of it. And so now we'll see what the order predicted to finish is, but I think LSU is probably going to finish fourth in that. It comes out tomorrow, and I'll talk about it on the show tomorrow, assuming we get home. But I think LSU will probably be picked fourth, and that puts LSU squarely on the bubble to make the college football playoff. And I think LSU and Kalen DeBoer are the two teams that have put themselves in that position where you better get this done. Kirby's got all the goodwill in the world. They'll probably get it done. Sark feels like he's driving that thing really, really well. I don't think the expectations are very high on Ole Miss. I don't think anybody expects Tennessee to take a massive jump with all that they lost from last year. South Carolina's got a little bit of buzz, but it's still South Carolina. Do you really feel like that's going to be a team that takes a huge step forward? I don't get the sense from talking to people about Texas A&M that there's a feeling that is imminent in year two. It's LSU and Bama are the two teams right there that have got to get things done, and that's kind of the narrative, I think, that's been shaped over the course of these 4 days here at the College Football Hall of Fame in Atlanta. I got a lot to do over the course of the next couple of hours. Eli Drinkwitz had one thing to say today that everybody was like, huh, really? 30-team playoff. We'll talk about that at the bottom of the hour. I do want to break down Texas A&M. That's an opponent on LSU's schedule. I want to talk about players that I think from LSU that could be on the All-SEC team. We'll break down Arkansas, who is on LSU's schedule. We'll come to Baton Rouge this year as well. Sam Pittman just finished up on the mic, so we'll talk about that. J.D. Piquel with us at 2:30 at the bottom of the hour. I'm looking forward to that conversation in person for the first time after 3 years doing that on the phone. So lots and lots to do. Appreciate you hanging out with us. Appreciate our great sponsors for making all of this possible. You know who they are by now. We've told you about them plenty of times. Of course, our presenting sponsor is Parrish Construction and Roofing. Also, Relief Windows and Rev, bringing you our coverage here from the College Football Hall of Fame in Atlanta. When we come back to King of College Football, Chuck Oliver is going to jump aboard. That's next on The Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Highland Insurance Group, HighlandIG.com is that website. Storm time, and one coming through right now in Louisiana. Hopefully this one doesn't organize and doesn't cause significant damage, but you never know when the next one is. Make sure your property policy is in the right place, and that place should be with the Highland Insurance Group. Trust your insurance broker like you trust your CPA, like you trust your attorney. It should be a trusted piece of your business. And the Howard Insurance Group, Jonathan Carver and his team can do that for you. We're here in the state of Louisiana. They can help you statewide. Make sure you've got your buildings evaluated properly. Look at that wind and hail deductible. Look at the co-insurance potential penalties. All those things are very important, and they're beyond the premium. Check with the Highland Insurance Group, the experts technically in insurance. Check them out online, HighlandIG.com.
Live from the 2025 SEC Football Media Days, powered by Parish Construction and Roofing. Enter now for your chance to win $10,000 cash at parishbuilt.com. Our coverage is also presented by Rev and Relief Windows.
Back here at SEC Football Media Days 2025. It's the fourth quarter here. Thursday, 4 teams left to take the podium. And it's our pleasure now to be joined by a voice that you hear every single evening in Baton Rouge at 6 o'clock. He's the king of college football, Mr. Chuck Oliver. Sir, how are you?
Oh, I'm happy to still be here.
It's a home game for y'all.
It really is. And that means that I actually get to stay through the end of day 4. Here's what I've noticed. When it was in Hoover, I was kind of in the middle. Mm-hmm. Everybody had the same sort of experience, and we got used to going there. It was a standard expense. I think based strictly on so many folks covering their own expenses, when you do distance away from the middle of the conference, Atlanta, Dallas, whatever, if it's day 4 and your guy's already been here, you save the expense. You and the 3 or 4 other folks, you take off back to the ranch. And so I think that's why I bet you 20% of the radio stations have probably packed up because their guy was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And that's fine. That's factual.
And it is. I mean, and it's the vibes down there in that room this morning were real quiet. Felt kind of like church service.
But I'm glad you said I live 4.5 miles from here. And so I got to see Eli come out and do Eli this.
He did. So we won a 30-team playoff. How we feel about that?
Eli just says some stuff sometimes.
He does.
Now, here's the great thing about him. If we go back in time, previous media days, you couldn't get away from quote machines. It was Phil Fulmer getting a subpoena in the lobby. It was Spurrier. It was Tuberville showing up a day early. It was James Franklin. It was like all of these guys you wanted to talk to. And then it turned into something completely different. It just everybody's saying the same stuff. I love Eli because at least he'll say something. Now, here's the challenge. It's the Missouri coach saying something. Yeah. And he's doing the best he can to make Missouri relevant. And they are. In his way, seems to be working. But he's the only guy that really will come out and really not have much of a filter to him. And I appreciate that. I like it. He tries to back it up, too.
Yeah, I mean, and they've had a good couple of years. How do we feel about them entering this year?
I trust his way, and I trust his hiring, and I trust his play calling. I trust Kirby Moore. And somehow Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, shake the tree, 4-star and 5-stars fall out of it. And the players in Missouri most years. The few that are there, he keeps getting in school. And my goodness, he can work the transfer portal. The first thing is to evaluate. And you really have to, when you're Ohio State, you have to evaluate, but you're evaluating Quinshon Judkins or the second best running back, you know. When you're Missouri, you got to evaluate a little further down the trough. And boy, they do a good job. So I'll credit him, man. If you want to say punching up, it's hard for me to say a state university and the SEC is punching up, but they are punching up. They really are.
Let's talk about Mark Stoops. Do you think everything changed when he got on that flight to College Station? I mean, what do we feel about Kentucky?
Nobody's happy.
Yeah, right.
There's 2 places in the conference, weird vibe, and they put them both in the room today. That's why there's just bad feng shui or something going on with Pittman and with Mark Stoops. Both of them return. Both of them have positive. Both of them have reason to give you some optimism. Seems like nobody in the fan base really wants either of those coaches back. Mark Stoops, I think what happened with him is he got away from, now I said like Eli, his way works. Mark Stoops' way was working. And then was it 2 or 3 years ago, they decided, all right, let's keep mauling people on the line of scrimmage and get freaky on the perimeter.
Yeah.
Well, okay, that's Ohio State and Bama and teams like that. That's not really Kentucky. We're going to be great at everything. And so I think he kind of lost his angle. and it's been bad results. So, how do you – it wasn't working when you were getting the 5-star linebacker and quarterback from UGA's portal. How's it going to work when you get Zach Calzada instead?
Right.
Like, that's a big challenge.
I mean, they whipped LSU in Ogeron's last year. I mean, that was the end for Ed when they went up there and were just non-competitive with Kentucky, and they don't look anything like that team moving forward. Shifting gears a little bit, Ty Simpson, Gunnar Stockton. Those are important positions at those two schools. How are we feeling about them in July?
I was in the building when Gunnar came off the bench against Texas, and it was real. It's the SEC. You have to have a rocket, and you have to read defenses and make good decisions and do it all quickly and all that. Then there's the energy from 10 guys. And I swear maybe it was all of what was going on with Carson up until that point, and then Gunnar was like this big, this exhale, and the team really responded. He's got the physical parts. He has to hold off Puglisi, who you ask anybody who's seen Ryan Puglisi throw a football, and hey, man, what'd you think? Every single person, they don't say a word. It's a sound. Oh. And like, okay, that's an adjective, right? So that Puglisi, I believe, will get the job at some point. But Kirby also had to keep swearing to people on the eve of a national championship. No, I really am going to start Stetson Bennett. Like, he really is my quarterback. I think they're going to be fine. What was the other thing?
Simpson.
Oh gosh, Ty Simpson. I'm in a quandary here. I think back, close my eyes. Kalen DeBoer, what has worked? It's quarterbacks with no ceiling, like blue sky, unlimited. Michael Penix at Indiana, Michael Penix at Washington, Jake Hayner's in the league. Why? Because he was with DeBoer at Fresno State. There's a guy way back, Lorenzo Brown in Division I AA. Kalen's first big job that he was in charge of an offense. They won 2 national championships with this kid. Kalen is about unlimited athleticism, potential, rocket arm, all this. Everything about Ty Simpson is what a good floor he has. And that doesn't really seem to me to be the profile of what Kalen has succeeded with. So I think Keelan Russell becomes the guy at some point.
Really?
I do not expect it to be week 1. At some point in the season, wouldn't surprise me if he takes over.
I'm curious if you think that if the quarterback play doesn't go very well and they lose a couple of games, like, what's the temperature going to be in Tuscaloosa?
Blistering. They were on him about his wardrobe last year.
Yeah, can't wear T-shirts on the Crimson Tide.
No, the dry fit. I mean, for the ample male, it's more of a challenge. Believe me, I've lived my life that way. But the more than anywhere in a conference, just as unreal competitive and with so much history, heritage, national championships, Heisman trophies, All-Americans, all of this stuff. There is nowhere in this conference, maybe in the game, where expectations define the place like Tuscaloosa. And 9-3 and not making the playoffs. We made the playoffs every year when it was a 4-teamer. We don't make it when it's a 12-teamer, and I can't promise you. I think that if I was giving you, I don't know if I have dark horses, if I was giving you anybody outside of Georgia and Texas as likely playoff teams, Alabama's my first, but they're my first in a group of about 6 that I don't have a whole lot of variance on. A&M and LSU and whoever else.
Ole Miss, are they going to take a step back, or how do you feel?
Ole Miss is at the bottom of that 6. And here's the thing, I've told everybody, I came in biased because I love Lane and Sark. No matter what they do, even in bad seasons for their teams, those 2 guys get the quarterbacks right.
Yes.
And so I started with Austin Simmons, and I was, here's what I like about Ole Miss. Like Lane, like Austin Simmons. And then I started overlooking the offensive line because I don't know yet. I need to see it. I like Caden Lee. Caden Lee is not Trey Harris. I need to see that. I like it. And so I got into this habit of, like, I started overlooking things like, we'll clean it up in post. All right, we'll come back and we'll fix this later. And I was like, I can't overlook 6 things just because I like the quarterback that I saw play 1 series against Georgia.
In the rain.
We love it. So I was like, I'm probably going to have to throttle down on the Rebels a little bit. But they're in that 6, but they're near the bottom. They're right above Tennessee.
And LSU's in that 6. Feels like a month ago they were here, but they were. And I felt like there was a lot of juice. Maybe that was because it was Monday morning. But how do you feel about BK? The expectations are through the roof in Baton Rouge.
Okay. It doesn't really matter what he says. He could have skipped media days or gone chest out. We're going to go 12-0. I see he's getting lauded for embracing the challenge, and he's really emphasizing the opener against Clemson. I've talked about that myself. LSU fans don't care what he says at this point. That's another place, like, very specific expectations stated, like verbal expectations, national championship. And they haven't been a playoff team, and that's even with a Heisman winner at quarterback. So here's all of that. That's the negative. That's Brian Kelly. Last 8 years, he's been a head coach. he has won at least 10 games. Every one of those except last year, and he won 9. That guy wins and wins and wins and wins. I think right on the edge of it. And my goodness, if you can let last year's class, which McKinley's not even the best freshman lineman out of last year's class now. Is that, bro?
I'm not, bro.
So, like, if they all grow up a little bit, and then the new recruits, and then the transfer portal, which, boy, they became big bank, didn't they?
They brought some cash out. They brought out the old Brinks truck.
Every story I see about, like, the state budget in Louisiana and all that.
Don't look at those. It's not a good reflection on this.
I think Louisiana's a Ponzi scheme. But they figured out the name, image, likeness, and God bless them, because I'll be honest, I'm not an LSU fan or grad or booster or anything like that. I have a more authentic season when Saturday night in Death Valley terrifies me. Like when I think my TV is also shaking it so much, and I need that again, you know?
We're hoping for it. We'll see. You got a pick to win the conference?
Oh, I'm going with Georgia. They won last year see, that's the add-on is Georgia last year. Carson, how much bad things did I just say about Georgia? You know, and then they won the SEC. Yeah. So in a season where I think Kirby was on his heels literally from day, he had no clue how to coach Carson Beck. I saw the way he was just trying to handle him. Yeah. And the offensive line, they had 3 all-conference players who got drafted in the first 3 rounds, and they couldn't run the ball. Like, how are both of those statements true? ETN, all the receivers. Georgia's not supposed to be last in anything in college football. They were last in America in drops. Like, that can't be real. And so he went out and got 8 new receivers. All of that stuff was true, and they still won the conference. So I think it's Georgia.
Wouldn't be surprising if the Bulldogs get it done. He is Chuck Oliver, King of College Football. You can hear him every single night, 6 o'clock here in Baton Rouge. Chuck, thanks for the time.
No, thank you for the invite. I appreciate you.
Back with more from SEC Media Days in Atlanta, Georgia. We're getting down to the home stretch on the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge, genesisofbatonrouge.com is that website. Every car that is on the lot is online at genesisofbatonrouge.com. Whether you're looking for an SUV, looking for a sedan, Genesis has one to fit your needs. From the entry level to the highest end model, you're talking about an IHA top safety pick. All of them IHA top safety picks. Some top safety pick plus. Safety is important to you. No matter what car you're getting into, Genesis always takes that very, very seriously. So go by and see them, Airline at PQ. Chat with one of their brand ambassadors. Get behind the wheel of a Genesis. Most of you haven't. Do it. You'll see the difference. It's a luxury experience at a reasonable price. It's Genesis of Baton Rouge. The entire inventory, all of it, is right there at genesisofbatonrouge.com.
Live from the 2025 SEC Football Media Days, powered by Parish Construction and Roofing. Enter now for your chance to win $10,000 cash at parishbuilt.com. Our coverage is also presented by Rev and Relief Windows.
Back here on Radio Row in Atlanta, Georgia, the College Football Hall of Fame. Just one coach left to take the big stage. That is Mike Elko. We'll hear from him just a little bit later. Our Thursday show is always brought to you by Sagrera Farms Premium Angus Beef. I told you last week that Sean came over, dropped off a little bit of the product. Whew. Best steak I've ever cooked at home. I will tell you that. Had a bone-in ribeye. It was just phenomenal. And that's what you're going to get every single time with Sagrera Farms. It's some of the best beef in the country. Top 1%. Everything that Sean puts out is prime. Ribeyes, fillets, strips. Got the chuck roast, skirt steaks, flank steaks, hanger steaks. If you want a fridge full of flavorful, tender, premium Angus beef, there's one phone call to make. And I give you Sean's personal cell. Call him. Say, I heard about Sean Hunt. I want some beef. Some of the best beef in America. Sean will help you out. It's a 225-719-1723. 719-1723. It is phenomenal stuff. They bring you our Thursday shows each and every week. Eli Drinkwitz was at the podium earlier today. And for my money, Eli Drinkwitz is the biggest personality among the coaches. Not afraid to take a little jab here, not afraid to push the line a little bit in a post-game interview or at media days. Say what you will about his coaching. Who cares? That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about just as a guy that's in front of the press. He's the biggest personality in the league right now. No Spurrier, no less. He's the guy. And today he took the podium and he said something that got some attention. And it is that he wants the playoff to be expanded to 30 games. 30 teams, I should say. 30-team playoff. And everybody just kind of looked around and went, that's just – I mean, you heard Chuck in the last segment. Like, sometimes Eli just says stuff to say stuff. But a 30-team playoff does exactly what he said earlier today. He said, look, that would create 30 different teams and fan bases that are engaged and focused on winning instead of looking at the transfer portal or realizing that they're not bowl eligible. Like, it would be 30 teams locked in to carrying in December. And that's true. And I told you I liked the 12-team expansion because I think having more teams invested is a good thing. I think if you lose your second game in early October and you're checked out for a championship the last 5 weeks, I don't think that's super great for anybody. So I liked the expansion to 12. An expansion to 30 is nuts. I'm completely out on that because you've, at that point, totally devalued any meaningful action in the regular season. I just, for grins, pulled up the final AP poll from last year. And if you're looking at teams that are around 30 in the poll that would be getting into the playoff, you're talking about Marshall. You're talking about Ohio. You're talking about Navy. And I just don't need to see that. Y'all know my feelings on this. I'm not, gung-ho for the little guy when it comes to collegiate athletics, and certainly not football. The little guy can punch up in baseball. The little guy can go on a nice run in basketball with 3 really good players. In this sport, with 100-plus scholarships and all this NIL money, the big fast strong are the big fast strong, and I don't need Marshall playing in a playoff game when ultimately I know that I'm getting to the finish line with Texas, Ohio State, Michigan, and Georgia as the best teams who are playing at the end. I don't need a 30-team playoff. I don't need Memphis and UNLV, who both finished the season ranked last year, in the playoff. Like, that's a waste of time. And I understand that everybody's going to be self-serving and they're going to say what they want to say that helps them out. And look, Missouri last year was 9-3, won 10 games. They didn't have a chance to get into the playoffs. The year prior to that, they won 11 games, but it was a 14 playoff. They didn't get into the playoffs. And so Eli Drinkwitz is sitting there going, look, I've had 2 great seasons, and I don't even get a chance. That's not great. Let's expand to 30. And I understand that he's here to look after his own interest, but I'm not going to take that seriously because you got to have something on the line when you're playing these games in October and November. And if you get out to, a 9-1 start, like, what do the last 2 weeks even matter? You're in the playoff. I'm completely out on a 30-team playoff for Coach Drinkwitz. I know that it's talking season and that it's just trying to plant a seed somewhere, but it just, to me, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. As far as Missouri goes, you heard me just say that. Some of you may not realize, but, I mean, Missouri's won 21 games the last 2 years. 21. That's a lot. That's 10.5 a year. 11 a couple years ago, and then a 10 spot last year. And you probably didn't pay much attention to Missouri's 10-win season last year because, 1, they didn't play LSU, and 2, they didn't win any big games. Like, you look at their wins, Murray State, Buffalo, Boston College by 6, double overtime over Vanderbilt, UMass. They went to Auburn and played that ridiculous game where Auburn just choked it away. And then they beat Oklahoma, who was not good. They beat Mississippi State. They beat Arkansas. That's the bottom of the league. And then whenever they stepped up in class to play the teams that had a pulse last year, they played Texas A&M and College Station. They lost 41-10. They let Connor Wigman go nuts. He got benched, and they went nuts on Missouri. They played at Alabama. How'd that go? Well, they lost 34-0. 34-0. They played at South Carolina, who was playing really well at the end of the season. Well, how'd that go? Well, they lost. So every time they stepped up in class, they lost. But they didn't play Georgia. They didn't play Texas. They didn't play LSU. They did not play Ole Miss. Like, their schedule is just remarkably light. So you look at them again this year, and I'll start rolling through the schedule here. Central Arkansas at home, Kansas, ULL, South Carolina, UMass. It's September 27th. They hadn't played a road game yet. Those are all at home. Then they play Alabama at home. And after that, it's at Auburn, at Vanderbilt, You got Texas A&M, Mississippi State, at Oklahoma, at Arkansas. Like, I don't know if Missouri is going to be any good or not this year. I don't even know if Missouri was good last year and they won 10 games. And my inclination is to look at Missouri and go, well, they weren't any good. Like, that's what I want to say when I look at what they did when they stepped up in class. I'm not going to give you a ton of credit for beating Buffalo, Boston College, Vanderbilt in double overtime, and whatever was left of Mississippi State and Arkansas at the end of the season. That's just not real inspiring. But it's coming right back at them again this year. I don't think I've ever seen a college football schedule that started with 6 straight home games. And not to mention, there's 6 straight home games, and the first 5 are pretty dadgum winnable. So Eli Drinkwitz has charmed somebody in that SEC office to get Georgia and Texas, who everybody thinks are the best 2 teams in the league, off the schedule. And then Ole Miss, who everybody thought was a contender last year, not on the schedule. Tennessee was a playoff team last year, not on the schedule. Everybody's dream darling this year is outside of Georgia and Texas is LSU. They're not on the schedule. And then if you look at who's going to be picked at the bottom of the league, outside of Kentucky, they play them. Not anybody thinks anything of Arkansas. They're on the schedule. Nobody thinks anything of Mississippi State. They're on the schedule. Despite what people may tell you, nobody thinks anything of Vanderbilt. Is Auburn going to get out neutral? They won 5 games last year. They're on the schedule. It's a charmed schedule for Missouri. So if you're going to look for a dark horse playoff team, if you want to put a few bucks down on somebody to make the playoff that nobody's talking about so you can get long odds on, well, hell, if Missouri somehow can beat South Carolina at home, they're probably a playoff team because they're not going to beat Alabama, but after that, I don't know of anybody that they can't beat. They got to replace Luther Burden, and you look at their offensive line, you've got 3 starters missing from that. You're overhauling running back. And you got Bo Pribula coming in at quarterback who transferred from Penn State because he wasn't going to play there. It's such a light schedule, and I'm surprised that did not come up when Eli Drinkwitz was on the podium today. I know that he's the one coach that might give you a snarky comeback to that if you asked him about the schedule being somewhat light. He certainly wouldn't embrace that, and but I think there's a possibility that he might snip back at that. But it's not debatable. I mean, look at when the order of finish comes out tomorrow and just highlight Missouri's opponents, and you're going to be way down on the bottom where you're doing the highlighting. Those are the teams that they play. So it's just one of those deals where they've caught some good fortune. I think he's done a pretty good job of recruiting that roster. They're never going to get a ton of 5-stars. When Luther Burden shows up in St. Louis, you got to go get him, and they did, and he turned him into a high draft pick who was really productive in college. But most of the time, you're going to be dealing with mid-level transfers and mid-level high school recruits. And for Eli Drinkwitz to take Missouri to very firmly the top of the middle of the SEC, that's a pretty good job there, considering that it's a state that doesn't produce a lot, and it's a program that doesn't have a ton of tradition, and it's not one of the most thunderous home field advantages. And they don't really have anything that comes to mind that's a massive advantage for Missouri, except schedule, which is a pretty important thing. It's something we talk about with every team that we break down is what does that schedule ultimately look like? And for Missouri, it's pretty favorable there. I don't care to think about a 30-team playoff, though, Coach Drink. So that's a little look at Missouri, not on LSU schedule, but wanted to cover that and kind of move forward. We got just about an hour and 15 minutes to go here on our final day from Radio Row in Atlanta. Shout out to our sponsors for making it possible. Parish Construction, Roofing, Relief Windows, and Rev. Still got a lot to do in the second hour. We're going to chat about who I think may be on the all-conference team from LSU, and that's released by the media. Going to talk a little bit about Arkansas, who LSU will play. They just took their turn in the big room just a minute ago, and then J.D. Piquel from 1-3 Sports is going to be with us at the bottom of hour 2. So lots and lots to do. Don't go anywhere. It's a Thursday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show. Live from the 2025 SEC Football Media Days. Powered by Parish Construction and Roofing. Enter now for your chance to win $10,000 cash at parishbuilt.com. Our coverage is also presented by Rev and Relief Windows.
Greg Sankey has climbed the podium for the final time this week. He'll introduce the head coach of the Texas A&M Aggies, Mr. Mike Elko, here in a matter of seconds, and that'll be the 16th of 16 head coaches to run through that room this week in Atlanta. And I want to talk about the Aggies right now as we close out hour number one. Our Thursday show is again brought to you by Sagrera Farms Premium Angus Beef. Incredible start to Texas A&M last year. They lose to Notre Dame, but then they go ahead and rip off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 straight wins, including a second-half beatdown of LSU. And you're thinking, well, this is the last undefeated SEC team. They've got a real shot to qualify for the conference championship for the first time in program history and get into the college football playoff. Like, that was a real thing. And then they went to Columbia, South Carolina, and got smoked by 24, beat New Mexico State, but then lost a 4-overtime game at Auburn, played Texas, didn't score an offensive touchdown in that renewed rivalry, and then they lost to the Las Vegas Bowl to USC and finished the season with a record of 8-4 in the regular season, which the jokes write themselves, and then 8-5 overall. That's the trajectory under Mike Elko the first year. And I look at Texas A&M, and you think back to what they were last year. And the first part was Connor Wigman, and then they transitioned to Marcel Reed, who will be their quarterback this year. They were second in the SEC in rushing yards per game last year. They were fourth in the SEC in yards per carry. And you look at that, and then you look at the formula of what they're going to try to be this year, and you realize they've got 4 offensive linemen that return, and Le'Veon Moss is back and healthy right now. Le'Veon Moss from Estruma in Baton Rouge, big, physical, bruising running back. So Texas A&M's identity this year on offense, very clearly with Marcel Reed as the quarterback, is going to be physical and running the ball. Like, that's what Colin Klein did when he was the quarterback at Kansas State, and that's what he's going to want to do with this offense. And we saw it at its best against LSU. But after everyone got a look at that, they couldn't do anything. They got bullied by a really good South Carolina defense, and then they didn't do a great job offensively against Auburn. That game got to be high scoring because it was so many overtimes. And then they didn't score offensive touchdown at home against Texas in the biggest game that they've played in quite some time on Kyle Field. So I'm torn between, well, that productivity for the course of the season being second in the SEC in rushing yards per game is pretty promising for this team. Or, well, once everybody figured out they were trying to run it, they couldn't. I don't know. I said this earlier this week, and Marcel Reed's highlight tape is better than I remember. Keep in mind, you're talking about Marcel Reed, who's kind of thrust into action because Connor Wigman is benched. And you're talking about a freshman out there playing. And he's athletic. He can run. He's not a rag arm. And he won some from the pocket. Like, when I watch Lenore Sellers highlights, I rarely see him ever winning from the pocket. He's just out there being the best athlete on the field. Reed did win some from the pocket, and they got him some help at wide receiver. Noah Thomas was kind of their number one last year. He's moved on. He's now at Georgia. But Casey Concepcion they bring in. And he's complete opposite of Noah Thomas. Noah Thomas is 6'6", and Concepcion is sub 6 feet. But he's great route runner, great in space, really catches everything. And he's going to kind of be the guy on the outside. But it's not going to be an offense, I think, that wows you through the air. They've got to win on the ground. And that's going to be their identity. And we'll see how far that takes them. As far as defense goes, Mike Elko's defense last year, as the first year at Texas A&M as the head coach, was not very good. And outside of, like, the second half against LSU where they forced a bajillion turnovers, like, you're talking about a defense that was 90th against the pass, 42nd against the run. I mean, in the SEC, they were 12th in total defense and 11th in scoring defense. Those are very, very average numbers. I think what you can probably bank on while Elko is there in College Station is that it's very likely that A&M is pretty damn good on defense. In year one, transition year, a lot of guys transfer out. That whole signing class that they signed 4 years ago completely vanished. And they didn't have the guys. And I think with the way that they're recruiting, which is at a top 5 level at this point for this current cycle, and Elko's acumen as a defensive coordinator, he was really good on defense at Notre Dame. His A&M defenses were very good as when he was a defensive coordinator. Then he went to Duke, and they won some games, and he played good defense there. Like, it stands to reason they're probably going to be pretty good on defense. How good they can be this year remains to be seen. They've got Torian York at linebacker, who is a really good player. They've got Will Lee at corner, who's a really good player. Des Ricks is the other corner. He was a 5-star when he went to Alabama. He was a guy that LSU pursued on the recruiting trail. But they don't have the dudes up front. They don't have those freak show defensive linemen that they had at times in Elko's first run through. I mean, not everybody's Myles Garrett, okay? I'm not talking about that level. But, like, they have had some guys that were really, like Walter Nolan they brought in. He was a great player at Ole Miss. And you look at some of the guys they've had, I don't know that this group has that. And you just, to be a championship-level team, those are the guys that you have to have. And so to me, I think Texas A&M is a notch below that right now. I think it's a good team. I don't think that they have a ceiling to be a great team at this point. Schedule-wise, it flips on them. They had all their great games at home last year. They got to travel this year. They go to Notre Dame in week 3. They go to LSU on October 25th. They got to finish the season in Austin. So while that was a great time to be a Texas A&M season ticket holder last year, and you were going to get those huge games at Kyle, and they didn't play very well against Notre Dame or Texas in the bookend games, the opener and the closer. They played good for a half against LSU, and that was plenty good enough. Now they got to pack it and go on the road. And, like, right now, you're kind of hard-pressed to pick them in any of those games. So your margin for error to not be 8-4 again is pretty razor-thin if you lose those road games. Can you go to Missouri and win? Can you beat Florida at home? Can you beat Auburn at home? Auburn's been a bugaboo for them. Lost to 4 overtime game to them. So it's too easy to say what I think their record's going to be. I do it with a smirk on my face currently right now if you're watching on YouTube. But it feels probably 8-4. And I don't think that there's massive expectation on Texas A&M based on the conversation this week in Atlanta. I think people were like, yeah, Elko's probably pretty good. Probably doesn't have quite the roster that he needs yet. They'll probably win some games. They'll probably lose some games. And then it shakes out, and there you are, you're 8-4, and you're back in the Las Vegas Bowl, or you're over in the Belk Bowl or the Liberty Bowl or the Music City Bowl. That's kind of where A&M's lived. And they're one of those teams, like Ole Miss, like LSU, probably like Auburn, although Auburn was rung down. They're in that group in the middle of the SEC trying to take a jump. And right now the feeling around here is that LSU is the more likely team to do that, and A&M's probably stuck in neutral for another year. Like, y'all know my feelings on Texas A&M. Y'all know I don't want them to win. That is rooted in the fact that LSU generally plays Texas A&M, and I do find them to be a potential threat. So I want to keep them in neutral or in reverse as long as possible. This feels like a year that they will stay in neutral, but I think Mike Elko's a pretty good coach. When I hear him talk, I think, okay, I don't think that about Michael Early, their baseball coach. I think he's way over his head. When I hear Elko talk and the way that he speaks and then his pedigree as a defensive mind and then the way that they're recruiting, it feels to me like he's got a chance to turn a corner. I don't think it's this year. That's my opinion on it. I would pick Texas A&M 8-4, somewhere around 6th or 7th in the league, a mid-tier bowl game, and that's kind of where they've been. So that's my 2 cents on the Aggies. All right, we're brought to you every Thursday by Sagrera Farms Premium Angus Beef. Some of the best beef in the country is just outside Baton Rouge. If you want a freezer full of flavorful, tender beef, all the cuts, ribeyes, fillets, strips, skirts, flanks, hangers, chuck, all those. Sean Sagrera's got them, and they are as good gets. Prime all the time. It's a 3-year process, every single animal. They're raised on grass, finished on grain, dry aged 45 days. It's an incredible product every single time. The consistency is just as impressive as the quality there at Sagrera Farm. So reach out to Sean and get that freezer filled with beef. It's still summertime, and pretty soon it's going to be fall. You're going to want to throw a steak on the grill to watch the Tigers play. Do it with Sagrera Farms Premium Angus Beef. We're here on Radio Row. That is always brought to you by our great sponsors. That is Parish Construction and Roofing, Rev, and Relief Windows. And we still have a lot to do here over the final hour of my show. We got to catch a flight here this afternoon, but we still got an hour to go here, and we got plenty to talk about. I want to talk about the Hogs for sure. J.D. Pickell Bell is going to join us at the bottom of hour number 2. But when we come back after SportsCenter, I want to spend some time talking about the All-SEC team and who I expect that LSU will put on that All-SEC team and who I think some of the off-the-radar guys that won't be on the preseason SEC team, but that I think have a chance to really surge and be a potential All-SEC pick when December rolls around. I think that discussion is going to be a pretty interesting one. And I'm bullish on a couple of guys for different reasons that we'll get into over the course of the next 20 minutes or so after we break for SportsCenter. If you missed any of our show today and really any of our content all week, it's been an awesome week here on Radio Row. If you missed any of that content, go check it out on demand. Wherever you find your sound, search Hunt Palmer Show, like, subscribe, rate, and review. Get our content in front of as many folks as we possibly can. We certainly appreciate that. We'll pause for SportsCenter, get some national headlines, and back with our
The Hunt Palmer Show. The Hunt Palmer Show.